All right, guys, welcome to Championship Weekend. I was gone in Las Vegas last week, but I heard Cort and Matt Friedman held it down, and I'm joined obviously here by with Cort Smith here from Bet the Prop, and we're gonna break it down. We got about a couple hours till these games start, but we'll go for 30-40 minutes here and see if there's any good stuff left in the prop market.
What's going on, Pete? How did you do in Vegas last weekend? I know from my end, probably the second or third best weekend of the year as far as record. We went 22-6 something last weekend, and it was a pretty exciting weekend. I felt really good about those cards. How did you end up in Vegas there with the props?
Yeah, it went great. I wasn't playing quite the amount of plays that I normally play when I'm back home, but you heard me probably talk about it on the take cast I did with Davis Maddock, but I made one big prop play for each game as kind of a communal bet with all my college buddies, and we went 4-0. So
that's amazing.
That always feels good, and now they can't. They've tasted the forbidden fruit of prop bets, and they don't want to go back to anything else.
I love it, dude. Let's grow that market. So I know you had Gallup in the Dallas game. What were the other ones you had?
Yeah, so we took the Marlon Mack under in that first game, and he got game scripted out of it, despite Frank Reich still trying to jam him into the line on first down.
Yeah, that was weird.
And then we had Gronk under, I think it was 4 catches.
Yeah, that one was fun.
That one was fun. I mean, we were manually keeping track and didn't have to do much manual accounting.
Yeah.
And then what was the last game? Oh, Mark Ingram over, and he got there on that big run.
Yeah, that was fortunate. I was on that one too. That was extremely fortunate. I'd written that one off for sure.
Yeah. So let's dive into it. I mean, these props. I guess Five Dimes went up on Friday.
Yeah, Five Dimes was they put some initial lines out on Wednesday. I put out an article on Wednesday afternoon with some lines and leans. Kind of had about 3 or 4 of the big ones per side. Didn't see a ton of value in those, but it was good to kind of get an early look at what the market was thinking on these guys. These cards this week, I think it's going to be a good week to play a couple good ones and sort of sit back and enjoy the games. I don't think there's as much value in these slates as there was last week. Last week, it just seems like there was a bunch of can't-miss spots over and over. This week's a little bit more tricky. Of course, anytime, these are pretty much the 4 best offenses in the league. And the reason they're good offenses is because, they spread the ball around. They don't give away what they're doing. So it's a little trickier this week trying to pick through it. But, I think there's a few things here, but I don't think it's a week to go nuts like we did last week. I mean, we had 30 plays in 4 games, so that's a lot of volume.
Yeah, so we'll do our best. Cort has been writing these up over at Bet the Prop, some of his favorite plays. He also has his article up at Action Network. The problem is the juice. I was refreshing the Bovada lines. That's primarily where I've been playing, and I got in a bunch of them, right when they open, but some of them, that start open at -110, like the Edelman over 6.5, and I believe that is now up to like -140 or -150. It just got out of control.
Did it really? Let's have a look. Let's have a look here.
Even his receiving yards over 80.5 is -130. Receptions over 6.5 is now -150. So
wow.
Some of these have gotten out of control, and if you feel like being contrarian, you can get on some plus money pretty easily by taking these unders.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think I booked Edelman at even money at where did I book that? I booked that at Bet Online, I believe. So I'm going to have a quick look and see if that's still up there for the people. But yeah, I mean, I'm heavily invested in Edelman again this weekend. I had him last weekend in 2 huge bets, and I was my 2 biggest bets of the year. I was trying to thread the needle, so I had Edelman over 6. That was our exclusive email pick. And then I had Edelman over Michael Thomas. Sorry, not Michael Thomas. I had Edelman over Alshon Jeffrey in receptions.
Yeah.
While simultaneously, one of my writers, Ben Battle, had Alshon Jeffrey over 4.5 receptions. So I was trying to thread that needle of, I wanted Alshon to have a decent day, but not too big, but still have Edelman to have a huge day, and it kind of worked out well. So I hit both of those bets. And yeah, Edelman's market really hasn't corrected to the level I believe that it should be. His line, it's moved now, but when it opened yesterday, or when it opened this week, I should say, and I'm just going to have a look.
And One thing I wanted to mention, and this is, I haven't checked it this morning, but you identified, and then another one of your readers identified a couple of really good middling opportunities between Bovada and Five Dimes. The first one was the Mark Ingram rushing prop, and there was what was it, like a 7 or 8 yard spread across those two books?
Yeah, it was 41 and a half. So you can play over 41 and a half at minus 115. And then one was Bovada and one was Five Dimes. And then the other one was 48 and a half. I'll bring up that tweet. But yeah, it was under 48 and a half. So yeah, you had to basically, if you get him in between 42 and 49.
Yeah.
So yeah, a nice 7 yard spread there, which is, absolutely within his range of outcomes. Yeah, it was 49 and a half. Yeah, so under 40. So Bovada was 49 and a half, and then Ingram. So that's a nice little spread. That's like, kind of a 20% landing spot we have there. And then another one of my readers, so Mike Ferg here, mentioned Brandon Cooks. He got it at 59 and a half, which is an incredibly low number at Bovada. And then Five Dimes had Cooks at 72 and a half yards. So yeah, a nice 13-point little line. So I don't play a lot of middles. I should probably look at them a little bit more. But yeah, I think it's a pretty nice opportunity. One of my readers was sort of pointing out that, you are giving away some EV, you're paying double the juice for these bets. But, I think now and then when you have a nice little spread like that, it's a pretty low risk play. You have two outcomes. You break even or you win some money. So with these big spreads like that, I think it's a good play. It's a fun play.
Yeah, and I will say it looks like Bovada might have adjusted both of those lines. It's still 72 and a half at Five Dimes. The Brandon Cooks receiving, it's up to 66 and a half. You can still play that over at minus 125, and then you could play the under the under 72 and a half at minus 120. So you're getting the juice, and then the spread now is down to 6 yards, but still a fun free roll sweat there if you want to play it.
What are your thoughts on Cooks? I played him initially. I put a head-to-head out article on Wednesday with Julian Edelman over Cooks on receiving yards, and it was an outstanding value at that point, and even money. It's moved a lot now. I don't think it's a value anymore. And it sort of felt like a lock to me. But now I'm starting to get a little bit nervous. I think Cook's ceiling is a little bit higher than maybe I was giving him credit for. What are your thoughts on Cooks today in general?
Yeah, so I think you have the kind of two competing narratives, right? The one is it's the Dome revenge game, and last time they played, he had a really nice game, went over 100 yards. Then the competing narrative would be, this defense is stiffened up a little bit. He's going to get a lot of Lattimore. And maybe that's a tougher matchup. I think the thing it comes down to, and also a concerning thing, is they were talking about how, it's probably Silva or someone talking about how Jared Goff's release time with the ball is one of the longest in the league. And you think about Cooks running those longer, slower developing routes. So you wonder if he's under attack and the Saints are getting good pressure, how many chances he's going to have downfield. I think I definitely lean the under here, and kind of the big assumption I'm making with this entire game is that the Saints are going to get up big. And I think they're going to have to survive on a lot of dink and dunk with Gurley out of the backfield and then Woods over the middle. And I'm worried if Cooks doesn't get that one big splash play that he's going to fall pretty far under this number.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good call. I'm not too sure what to expect in this game. I feel a lot stronger with the game script in the New England game. Initially, I grabbed the Rams plus 3.5 earlier in the week when I saw that, and I thought that was super value. But then when I really started breaking down these matchups and stuff, it's hard to see where the Rams hold much of an advantage. I think maybe in the slot there with Robert Woods is a nice advantage for them. But it's tough to see where they really can beat the Saints. So you think you see the Saints kind of jumping out in this one?
Yeah, I do. I just think there's basically what the Rams have been wanting to do. We saw it last week against the Cowboys. They want to run the ball so badly, and now you're going on the road against one of the better run defenses in the league who can score quickly, and I don't know how they're going to be able to stay committed to the run in the way that they would like to, and I think they're going to have to rely on Goff in catch-up mode a lot, and it's actually why I've been mad. I primarily play at Bovada, and they haven't posted a C.J. Anderson rushing line still. And the one at 5 dimes that you talked about, it's still up right now, 45.5. You can get the under at -120. And sticking with that game script line of thought, I really like the under there for CJ.
Yeah, I still like that bet. I think I lost a little bit of closing line value on that. I booked it at 45.5. Is it still -130 there?
-120, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I lost some value there. I booked it at 45.5. -130, and now I'm seeing that line. I know Sean Corner of the Action Network, he found a 53.5 line at FanDuel, I believe it was, which obviously not everyone can bet on, but that's a crazy line. So yeah, I lost some value here, 45.5 at -130. I feel good about it. It's one of those things where, it's a left brain, right brain. I mean, the logical part of my brain tells me this is an absolutely a plus EV bet in the long term. But they do. What was up with last week? I mean, 23-16. I think the carries were. So I'm kind of treating that like an aberration, but I'm not. I don't think that's a lock that that's an aberration. But even so, the Saints, their run defense is incredible. 10% fewer rushing yards allowed than the next closest team. And yeah, I just can't see the Rams sort of bashing it into the strength of the Saints defense all day with a running back that was unemployed for most of the year.
Yeah, and I was listening to Dr. Chow was on the Warren Sharp podcast, and he was talking about how the Rams have handled the Gurley injury situation. And basically, they gave him a couple weeks rest. Then they bring him back last week and kind of have him in a proper committee with Anderson. And now, Dr. Chow's thesis was he's fully healthy now, and he expects him to see more of the lead back role in that kind of narrative of him slowly ramping back up. And I think even there was quotes from McVay last week that said, Gurley wasn't in game shape yet. And I don't think they wanted to tax him like that. The CJ narrative is kind of a fun one, and it's a nice story, but we know the Rams are completely willing to give Gurley all the work. And I have to imagine after how he did last week, he's healthy now, probably has some more game speed or, game shape in him. I really think CJ is on the short end of the stick of carries in this game.
Yeah, it's hard to see him. I mean, obviously he's not going to get 20 carries a game. And even if he's a bit more involved, like 10, 12 carries, the Saints defense, I think, is good enough to hold him here, especially obviously if that game script kind of works out the way that you laid things out. Let's talk about Alvin Kamara.
Yeah.
He's another really interesting spot. I booked him. The only reason I booked this bet, I wrote this one up in the article, the free article this week. And the big thinking here for me was just I was getting +110 at 62.5. If I was getting even money at that number at the 62.5, I probably would not have bet it. But the +110 on a pretty reasonable number for Kamara. He put up 19 carries, and that was a career high against the Rams earlier this year. 82 yards, so he cleared that pretty easily. And the Rams have been pretty weak against the run lately. They gave up a whole bunch, 111 yards to Alfred Morris, 101 to Jordan Howard, 69 to Tariq Cohen in the last couple weeks. So definitely vulnerable. I think they've given up 100-yard rushing total in 4 or 5 straight games. So yeah, I could see the Saints kind of attacking that way. It's an all right number. It doesn't get me excited. I'd rather see it at high 50s. But what are your thoughts on Kamara in that 62.5 number?
Yeah, I really like it. We were messaging about this earlier in the week. Kamara's production, it can be so spiked, and the only thing that gives me pause is, we saw last week he had like a 50-yard passing touchdown taken off the board because of a penalty, and I can so easily see him getting to that number either rushing or receiving that I ended up booking the total rushing and receiving yards. I believe it was at 100.5, just feeling more confident of capturing all of his work. But I do like that number, and maybe just as kind of like a general teaching moment. What do you like better? So on Bovada, you can get the rush yards over 64.5, so you get 2 extra yards, but you're paying -125. Whereas on 5 dimes, please keep me logged in, you can get over 62.5, but +105. So do you like the plus odds or the extra 2 yards in those kind of situations?
I think when it's that close, I'm going to, for the most part, I'm going to shade towards taking the yards. But when we're, that's more in the, say under 50, say under 50 yards, if it's a difference between like 44 and 46, that's a much bigger difference, not a much bigger difference, but it's a bigger difference to me than 62 and 64. Just because, once we're getting into those bigger range of outcomes, it's not going to make as bigger of a difference. So I'm going to take the value there. I booked it at plus 110 and it's a plus 105. I think that's a really good value. So yeah, in this particular situation, when we're dealing with the higher number, not a big difference. I sort of look at these things in terms of percentages, right? Like the percentage drop from 64 to 62 is a smaller percentage drop than to say, 40 to 38 kind of thing. So when it's a lower percentage drop like that, I might look to the value. But generally speaking, I'm probably going to buy yards for the most part when it's a lower number.
Yeah, and one thing, I guess, to just maybe give us a little pause, I have Sean Corner's projections and their prop tool over at Fantasy Labs right here, and he actually is liking the under on these Kamara. He has Kamara projected for 59.5. I think it's kind of a median situation where Kamara is such a spiked weak player, and I guess then, if I do think this is going to be a blowout script, that should maybe push me to more Ingram, but it's still like, to get to that blowout, Kamara and Michael Thomas are probably going to have big days in the first half to get them there. So I can easily see Kamara, and this is great analysis, but it feels like Kamara is beyond due for one of these massive games. He's been so close. That penalty wiped one off the board. He hasn't had a long run or a long play in a while. So if you want to play that card, which is great analysis, it does feel like it's coming for Kamara.
Yeah. You mentioned Michael Thomas. Let's talk about him a little bit. This was a rare spot where I actually am chasing a number over 90. But, it's one of those things where if you're going to do it with a guy who gets pretty much 50% of the team targets on a week-to-week basis. Just absolutely insane, the target share that Michael Thomas has seen. He had a 42% market share of targets when these two teams met earlier in the year. And then last week, again, 42% of the targets. He's probably going to have, I think, not that the Rams secondary is great, but I mean, he should avoid mostly the strength of it in Aqib Talib, who really just sort of sticks to the outside, whereas Michael Thomas moves around a lot. And yeah, he just sort of had a career game, 211 yards against these guys before. Just a lot of nice check marks for Michael Thomas here. And shop around for that one though, because I got that at 92.5 yards. And I mentioned in my article at the time that I was really surprised that this wasn't pushing triple digits. And I see that it is starting to now. I think Bovada is at 99.5.
99.5 and minus 145 if you want the over.
Holy crap.
Yeah. People have been hammering it. You can get it still good at, even at 5 dimes, it's now minus 130 over 95.5. So, I mean, it's pricey at this point in the week.
Yeah, it's 95.5, you said?
Yeah, at 5 dimes.
Yeah, so the numbers come up and the price has gone down. So yeah, I'm not sure how much value there is there anymore. That was when I booked it, I believe, on Friday. And even then, I mean, I'm not, 92.5. I'm not popping corks over here on that one by any means. I think it's still, anytime you're dealing with those numbers, it's going to be tough to achieve. But I mean, is there any way he doesn't just absolutely mash today?
It seems very hard to believe that. I mean, again, the only way, but the way that they use him is both a possession receiver and a big play receiver. His workload is just so locked in that, I don't mind that. It's just like, who wants to pay minus 145 for a guy to clear 100 yards? I mean, I'm almost tempted to take the under just for the plus money, but no, he's in such a great spot.
Sorry, I just want to ask you. I've been all morning long looking for a way to fade Jared Goff. I did make a personal play here we can talk about on him and then maybe make it an official play. But yeah, Goff, I mean, so many things working against him with these splits, the road splits, the latter half of the year splits, against pressure splits, which the Saints can bring. Nothing really looking good here for Goff. The yardage total isn't great. I believe it's about 280, 289.
Yeah, 286 on 5.
Right.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts there?
So the only thing that's scary about that, and I do think he's going to have a rough game, is that I think there could be a ton of garbage time for him. And I worry about him racking up completions and yardage in kind of an empty way that would kill some of the value on these. I mean, one of the nicest ones that I would like, but it's already been hammered on both 5 dimes and Bovada, is just, does he throw an interception? And it's minus 155 on 5 dimes and minus 140 on Bovada. So that would probably be the bet I'd like the most, but you're paying juice on it. But yeah, I just worry about those completions and yardage markers. I think he could get there in garbage time, even if he has a rough game.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I sort of felt the same. I didn't bet any of his actual lines. I did make a personal play on Brady over Goff with passing yards. Not a big play, but I think there's a bit of value there. It's, basically a situation where one quarterback, is going against the greatest offense of all time, and the other quarterback's going against, a team that's really sort of turned a bit run heavy, and their offense is not lighting it up like it was before. So I think there'll be more opportunities for Brady to put up yards, but I don't know. That was how I ended up playing, sort of shorting Goff there, but I don't think it's an amazing play.
Yeah, I'm just checking corner. It looks like the one he likes is under 2 touchdowns. You can get it at Sportsbook, but the odds looks like it have gone through the roof. Because it's on 2.5 TDs. So yeah, the 3 TDs seems very unlikely, but that's a lot of juice even to pay for that.
Yeah, I also made a small personal play on Breeze over Goff for touchdowns.
That seems nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's even money, but again, a tie is a loss there. So if they both have 2, I lose that one. So, but I think there's a little bit of value there, not a ton. Again, it's just Goff's tough. There's a lot of reasons not to like him this week, but it seems like the market has adjusted to that fact pretty well.
And mentioning some of the personal plays, it looked like you were leaning under on Gerald Everett. What's your thought process there?
A couple things. He really sort of disappeared from the game plan last week. That might have been a little bit specific to the Cowboys and wanting to establish the run and having the better blocking tight end in there in Higbee. And then the other fact, Saints very good against the tight end. They completely eliminated Zach Ertz in 2 games this year, and they're top 3 or top 4 in yardage allowed. So under 21.5, number just seems a bit too high for Everett. His ceiling's really, I think, sort of 3 targets, maybe 4 targets in this game. But, the Saints, again, just play very good tight end defense, and that number is probably just a little too high for me. Yeah,
I'm actually heading over to Bovada on my personal account here. I'm going to make that bet because on Bovada they have it at 24.5.
Oh, wow.
So you
can
even
get money.
No, it's minus 120, but I still.
Okay, that's not bad. Yeah.
And we know for those tight ends, like that 3 extra yards is pretty big.
That's huge. Yeah. I mean, that's a 10% difference, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Was 5 dimes.
24.5. Wow, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we talk about, or do you want to talk about your email play? Speaking of small unders here.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, we're 5-0 in these email plays, so I definitely wanted to, at this point, I'm looking to keep the dream alive. Our email play this week was a Mark Ingram play, under 14.5 receiving yards. I'm just going to bring something up here. Under 14.5 receiving yards. So, yeah, this was at Bovada, I believe. And a lot of places, this line was set around 10.5, 11.5 when I looked yesterday. I haven't looked today. So 14.5. He's just not, he's not that big part of the passing game. Obviously, he's never had more than 3 targets in a game all season. He's only had 3 catches once all season long. And then, his average over the last 9-10 games was around that 12 mark. We're still got some room to clear, but almost all of that, well, more than half of that came against the Bengals, 58 yards against the Bengals in week 10. He really boosted that average. So the Bengals were brutal, obviously, against running backs. So you take that one out, and the average plunges to 7.4 yards receiving per game over his last 8 games for Mark Ingram. And the Rams, just kind of middling against the running back pass. I think they're about 15th, 16th in yards allowed. And then they've got that very poor run defense of late. So I sort of see, like we talked about before, a lot of Kamara. I think Ingram will have a solid 12 carries in this one, but that number is pretty juicy. I think it's, his averages don't really approach that. His recent form doesn't approach that. Hard to really make a case that he's ever going over 14.5 in this game.
Well, yeah, and there's actually another middling opportunity here if we want. Corner has him projected at 12.6 yards here, so if you wanted to play the Bovada under 14.5, and then you could head over to 5 dimes and play the Mark Ingram over 10.5, although
10.5.
Both of those you're paying minus 140, but there is a middle opportunity there where you could sweep it. What do you think there again, though? It's similar to the Kamara situation, so it's 10.5 over, under 10.5 for plus 110. Do you like those 4 extra yards, or do you like that plus money right now?
Definitely the yards here. Yeah. I mean, that's from 10 to 15, that's a 50% difference.
Yeah.
In his outcome. So yeah, absolutely. And when it's this low, I'm going to take the yards every time. I'd rather pay a little bit more to get those more yards because I mean, definitely easy. A very likely outcome here is 2 catches for 12 yards. I think that's an extremely likely outcome. So I think you have to take that, and his yards per catch is right around 7, I believe, or yards per attempt is right around 7. So, I think you have to take the yards there for sure.
All right. Well, why don't we transition over into the late game here, and also mention those of you guys joining us. Thanks for hanging out with us. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. I mean, Cort and I will definitely have enough stuff to talk about as is, but if you guys have anything in particular you want us to touch on or check on a line for you, drop it in the chat, and we'll try to get to it. What has been standing out for you in this Kansas City game? I know we both have feeling a little confident about the Chiefs having a nice game script here. Weather doesn't seem to be much of an issue anymore, other than it being, relatively cold. How are you feeling about this game?
Yeah, I like the chances of the Chiefs doing well in this one. I feel more confident about the fact how this one's going to play out than I do the other one. But the thing is, in this game, the lines for some reason appear a little bit more bloated when you consider, the totals of these games are both a 56 and a 56.5, I think. So expecting about the same amount of offense, but the props on the New England KC game just seem a little bit more elevated to me. They're hard to attack. We mentioned Edelman. I think he's got a nice little role coming to him this way. I guess let's talk about White. It's a tricky game. I don't have a lot of great plays here. White under 18.5 rushing yards was one I wrote up for the Action Network yesterday. And I think that's pretty good. He really kind of had a polarized outing last week against the Chargers, 17 targets and 0 carries. So he was playing wide receiver very well and not running back at all. And that was against a Chargers team that was pretty poor against the running. I think they had allowed the most running back receptions on the year, or most running back yards. And then the Chiefs rank, bottom third in that category as well. So I think we'll see a pretty similar game plan by the Patriots in this one. Chiefs have a pretty good pass rush, so I think it's going to be get the ball out quick to Edelman, and a lot of White receiving chances, I think, again. And hard to see him really giving White much of a chance on the ground. Hard to see more than maybe 4 carries for him in this one. I see the Patriots sort of attacking the Chiefs in a similar way they did to the Chargers last week.
Yeah, and the big question is Andy Reid had to have watched that Charger game, seeing that soft zone that the Chargers were running, letting, James White just get reception after reception. But then, there's definitely a chess game that the Patriots can play, getting both of those running backs in the backfield, getting positive looks for James White. But I do feel like Andy Reid has to have those little dump-off passes to James White front of mind right now. So that gives me a little bit more pause about him having a massive day. But from a game script-wise, you have to think that it's going to be a ton of James White and a ton of Edelman. And that's actually one of the things that's most interesting to me is Sony Michel, just because I find that number pretty big right now. At where I got it was 80.5. And I think they might have even taken it down. at?
It's at 81.5 right now. It's sportsbook anyway.
Okay. Yeah, so we were kind of going back and forth over that one. It looks like they have it at 78.5. You can get plus 120 at 78.5 at 5 dimes. My thought process is, Michelle,
plus 120 on the under?
On the under, yeah.
Yeah.
So
sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, we were talking. We think the line's pretty efficient, but I'm just kind of taking a stand on this game script, and it feels a lot like the Marlon Mack situation last week, where yes, the Colts want to run Marlon Mack, and they're going to try, and the Pats want to run Michelle. But if they get down 10 points, 14 points, they're just not going to be able to salt the clock like they want to, and I kind of want to make a game script play on the Sony Michelle under.
Yeah. It's going to be no play for me, but I would definitely lean pretty heavy towards the under. You mentioned Marlon Mack. Really surprising to see him get that kind of run, especially once they fell behind. And I don't really think the Patriots are going to make the same mistake. They're going to have to score points. They know that. I can't see the Patriots trying to play a ball control game against the Chiefs. It doesn't work. So I can't see the Patriots making that mistake. And, Sony Michel getting 24 carries again just doesn't really seem realistic. But that said, I mean, the Chiefs are a pretty poor run defense, so he could hit this number. But yeah, I'm definitely leaning under there. It's tough to see him getting sort of more than 20 carries in this one, I think.
Yeah, and it does look like, corner has him projected at 79.6. So if you do want to make the play, I was on the wrong tab. They do have it up at Bovada. You can get under 80.5 at even money, and that was the play I made. So if you do,
I like that.
Yeah, not having to pay any juice there, and 80's a pretty big number for a road underdog running back against a prolific offense who also doesn't catch passes. I just kind of like that setup.
Yeah, I like that. And then we've got also Cody Byers been doing some monkey knife fight picks for us today, and got a couple articles up on the site from him, and they're always interesting, the monkey knife fight ones, because they sort of set their own lines. They got their own thing going on, I think. And so that line's been set at 71.5. So we're taking the over on that. And, I think somewhere in the 70s is a pretty reasonable outcome for him. But I think that's, they're begging you to take the over there. So we're kind of falling for it on that one. But, yeah, I mean, to hit 80 yards, tough to see. Let's talk about, we mentioned James White, and I'm taking the under on the rushing yards. 54.5 for receiving yards. What's your take on that, Pete?
Yeah, that's it's a big number. He doesn't get a ton of yards after catch too, so you need the volume, I think, to get there. It's probably a no play for me. That line seems about right. What's your thought?
Yeah, I mentioned it in the article. Kind of an interesting stat I dug up. So there were 17 instances this year when a running back was given a receiving line of 54.5 yards or more. And those bets have gone 12-5. The under's gone 12-5 on those bets. So, yeah, it's one of those, and that includes James White. His line, when these teams met before, his line was set at 57.5. And I believe he finished with 53 yards. So, I think it's a pretty good number. I don't want to mess around with it too much, but I would lean under for sure, just historically. But it's one of those things, Friedman and I talked about this last week, and I said something similar, and, he beat the over on the first drive. So that's well within his range of outcomes as well. So I don't want to bet the under, and I think that betting the over is just a bad bet in the long term. These kind of numbers rarely come through for running backs. It's hard. I mean, these running back bets are very high variance. So, 20 yards is possible, and 120 yards is possible.
Yeah, and you're paying the juice on the over. Bovada 55.5, minus 140 on the over. 5 dimes, it's 56.5, but still minus 125 on the over. Corner has him projected at 49.9 yards, so actually likes that under. So if you do want to play the under, I would probably do it over at Bovada 55.5, where you're getting plus 110.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't think you need to make that a big priority. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean, if I gun to my head, I might even take the over there, just because, it's going to be a crazy game. And like you say, if you think the Patriots are going to be trailing, he's going to be involved. So, and he's 17 targets is ridiculous. That's absolutely insane. So even hitting half of that this week, he can still hit that number. So it's a scary one to mess around with.
Yeah, and it's tough. And all of these kind of the big names, the juice has come in. There's not a lot of value left on some of these plays. Let's talk about Damian Williams. You had made a play here looking at his over 51.5 rushing yards. Obviously, last week was one of the most inefficient lines ever. What was that? 49.5 and Ware was ruled out. You couldn't get enough money down on that prop, and now we're in a similar situation. Of course, Ware is going to be active, but you're getting that similar line, and then the big question is, well, how much work is Ware going to command? This number still feels small to me, though.
Yeah, you say you couldn't get your money fast enough. I don't know why I didn't play that one last week, 49.5. I got spooked off it for some reason, and it should have just been a slam dunk, and I was kind of kicking myself. Now we're looking at, 67.5 is the bet online number. The number you referenced, that's from Monkey Knife Fight. We're playing that one at over 51.5. So, again, you're not going to be able to find that 51.5 on the regular books. Like I say, the Monkey Knife Fight kind of has their own thing going on. So, certainly over 51.5 on the Monkey Knife Fight ones. We're pairing that with the Sony Michel over 71.5. So certainly over 51.5, 67.5. 67.5. But a lot of juice on that one, isn't there?
Yeah, it's Bovada has it 69.5 minus 125. Five Dimes has it 64.5 minus 140.
Yeah, so I mean that's one where I'd probably go the opposite. I'd probably pay for some more yards. I'd rather get even money and kind of maybe hit that line closer to 70, but I don't know if we have that option.
What's your read just from a higher level game perspective? Tyreek Hill has just destroyed the Patriots in their previous two meetings. They sold out to stop Kelsey in their last matchup. Like, if you're just putting yourself in Belichick's position, I have to assume the first priority is shutting down Tyreek Hill, and then do you think that they still try to double Kelsey as well, which would theoretically lead to some softer boxes for Damian Williams?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, they haven't done well stopping them at all. So whatever they've been doing the last couple games, they might, you could definitely see them switching away from that a little bit. And that, I think they put a lot of attention on Kelsey. He's been a bit stymied by the Patriots in the last few meetings. So yeah, maybe they give a little bit more attention to Tyreek Hill this time around, who's absolutely shredded them. Yeah, the Tyreek one's interesting. I mentioned in my leans and lines earlier this week that it was a classic no play for me. And then I went against it, and I did end up betting the over there, but only because I found a really good number at 5 dimes. Most places it's kind of in that low 80s, 82 to 84.5, but there's a ton of juice on the over. Like minus 160, minus 150 on the over most places. But 5 dimes has it at 80.5. At least they did about an hour ago at 0.9. Sorry, minus 110. I'm Canadian. I got to throw my Canadian odds in there. So yeah, minus 110 on that. So I like that. At 80.5 seems like a pretty reasonable number considering how Tyreek Hill, how well he does against the Patriots. I don't know. I don't know is the honest answer to that. I don't know how the Patriots are going to treat that. I think it would be a bit of a mistake to just assume that it's going to be the same as it has been in the past with kind of letting Tyreek run free. I think they might have to give a bit more attention to him.
Yeah, that makes sense. What else is jumping out to you in this game? I know we were talking, and it's definitely pretty thin for finding attractive plays, especially on the Chiefs side. I mean, was there anything with Mahomes or Kelsey that stood out to you?
No, I looked and looked. I wanted to make something kind of play on Mahomes. I think the yardage number is pretty sharp. I've been trying to guess the Mahomes completions a lot this year, trying to play in some head-to-heads, and I mean, the guy's just bulletproof. He doesn't really have any splits of significance. He's just sort of a machine, and he does whatever he wants. I I think the over on it was 24.5, I believe, with Mahomes completions I saw earlier. I think that's not a bad play. But yeah, I'm not making any big plays there. The quarterbacks are tough to figure in this game. The ranges of outcomes are pretty wide on these guys. I did make a play on Gronk. I know that everybody's on the overs this week just because of what we saw, the last couple weeks. We played the under last week. We mentioned that earlier and just sort of laughed all game long about how easy that game was. And now those lines have swung hard the other way, and everyone's taking the over. I know Sean Corner likes a lot. I think he's got overs across the board in the props tool. Yeah, over. He likes the over 3.5 receptions and the over 47.5 yards. And I mean, I totally get it. The projection makes sense. We're probably going to see some regression to the mean for Rob Gronkowski. He can't be that bad for that long, especially against a poor tight end defense. But yeah, I made a small play on Gronk under 3.5 receptions at I guess that would be what, minus 130, minus 125. So yeah, I mean, just the targets have dried up. We're looking at 2 targets, 1 target, 2 targets, 3 targets over the last few games. So it's hard to just suddenly give him credit for 5 targets, even in a good matchup like this. Like, certainly possible, but it's hard to just say, okay, yeah, I'm going to put money on that happening.
Yeah, I know. It almost makes me, if I did, I was just, I'm just looking at this with a fresh set of eyes now. You can get Gronk scoring a receiving TD at plus 170. I'd almost rather do something where I'm not having to worry about how many targets he's getting, but know that the way they were using him, they were still trying to get him targets in the red zone last week. So if you really wanted to get freaky and not have to sweat all the catches or whatever, that could be a potential play.
That's interesting. He had a couple of red zone targets last week?
Yeah, I want to say he had one where he drew a flag in the red zone. So they were definitely looking for him. I think he ended up only having those 2 targets though.
Yeah, I know. On the was watching NFL Network this morning, and they mentioned a pretty crazy stat that I think he only had 3 red zone targets all year long. I guess that would have been regular season before last week.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. So, but yeah, I like that. Plus 170, I think you said on that. I mean, that's pretty good value. You just need one pass. You can hit that one.
Yeah, I mean, because everyone's hammering the under. It looks like the under is minus 230 for no score. So I don't know. It kind of stands out to me. If you do want to make your stand on Gronk having a good game, I think I'd maybe want to do it. Or maybe another way, he did have that big catch last week. You can get longest reception over 18.5 yards. That would be another way. He has been getting, a longer ADOT with his target. So, but I don't know. It's still all pretty thin. Yeah,
it is. I mentioned Edelman. Unfortunately, I think, we already talked about that, the value going there. Sammy Watkins is an interesting one. Let's chat about that. I know earlier in the week when we were chatting, you were anxious to see that line because you thought he might be a guy who can get loose, but then the line came out and it was pretty high. Let's see what we're at now here with Sammy.
56.5 on 5 dimes, 55.5 on Bovada. Yeah, I was hoping for something in the 40s there. Yeah. And again, just with the thought process of, we know the Patriots, they always want to take away your best weapons, thinking they prioritize Hill and Kelsey, and Watkins now healthy. He had a really nice yards after the catch run last week, showing a little bit of explosiveness. So I wanted to like that, but that's just such a big number that I ended up just staying away from it. 55.5 for kind of a third, or that might be generous, the 4th target in that offense. But I guess he's one of those plays where it's like, if you like the over in this game, if you think the conditions set up for a shootout, then an ancillary piece that's not going to get double teamed, that makes a lot of sense. But in a neutral game script, you wonder about him being able to get to that number.
Yeah, I think all things considered, I would probably lean towards the under. I think I was actually considering that for the email pick yesterday, but just wasn't quite strong enough. You mentioned, you said 56.5, right? Is that what you were seeing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 56.5, 5 dimes, and then seeing it at 58.5. Yeah, 58.5 sportsbook.com. So, I think I'd probably look at that under, to be honest with you. I'd probably try to find the highest number I could and go under if I want to play Sammy. It's just, it's too big. Certainly lots of situations where he could do that. And like you say, it makes a lot of sense that he's going to get the least amount of attention from Belichick. But, to suddenly suggest that Sammy Watkins is a guy who's going over 60, I find that a little bit hard to believe. That number is just a little too high for me.
Yeah, speaking of ancillary receivers on the Chiefs, we had talked about this over message. I don't think it made it into any of your official plays, and it's not even on 5 dimes, but Chris Conley receiving yards on Bovada was 17.5. When we were messaging, I did end up grabbing that under at -110. It's up to -125 right now. Sean Corner has him projected for 14 yards. I kind of like that under there for Chris Conley.
Yeah, for my email pick, that was a coin flip between the Conley play and the Mark Ingram receiving play. I think that's a pretty good play. 0 receptions in each of the last 2 weeks, and then going back to week 11. So he had 7 receptions in week 11, but since then he hasn't had more than 3 receptions in a game, hasn't had more than 5 targets in a game. And of course, those targets really started to dry up with the return of Sammy Watkins. His splits with Sammy are pretty significant in terms of the amount of targets that he gets when Sammy's healthy and active. So, I saw that number at 18.5 yesterday, and it looks like it's come down a little bit, but I think 17.5 is pretty reasonable. We could easily see another goose egg from Conley in this one.
Yeah, I like that play. That number seems more suitable for when Sammy was injured and he was, theoretically had a path to touches. But now with Sammy back, it's just hard to see him. I guess it would just have to be one big catch down the field. He got loose or something. But, yeah, I think that's a nice little under there. Man, this game gets dry fast. Is there anything else I'm forgetting?
No, I don't think so, man. Just looking through this. I was really looking hard for some more plays. I like the plays better in the New Orleans game. The lines just seem a little bit more reasonable to me. I'm playing the Tyreek Hill, but there was nothing else that stood out. I really want to find a way of playing the quarterbacks here, but I just couldn't find anything that I like.
Yeah, and I mean, I was trying to see if there were anything juicy with Chris Hogan or Dorsett, thinking that the way you beat the Chiefs a lot of times is over the top. And I couldn't find any numbers or anything I liked. I mean, even Dorsett, like 30.5 was just way too big of a number. The Hogan, people are smashing the over 3.5 catches, but that is so dicey with he's so little rapport with Brady. So I wanted those numbers to be smaller so you could take the over, but every bit of value is already baked into those lines. Yeah.
I don't see much else there. Well, let's start wrapping this up. Before I texted you and asked you to take a look at my personal plays and find one that we can make official. So we talked about a few of them. Let's go through these real quick. Everett under 21.5 receiving yards, although you said 24.5, so we can make that the play as well.
Yeah.
Gronkowski under 3.5 receptions. Breeze over Goff passing touchdowns. Brady over Goff passing yards. Todd Gurley we didn't talk about, but that was a personal play as well, under 35.5 receiving yards for him. And then Tyreek Hill over 80.5. What gets you excited out of those? What's your best bet as to one of those coming through, Pete?
Well, I already know what it was because it's the one bet that I made live during the show. I ran over and grabbed the Gerald Everett under 24.5. So I think that's the one that gets me the most excited right now.
Pick a second one out of those then.
Yeah, I would say I don't really want to touch the Gurley receiving yards. I think he will get a lot of the receiving work and the kind of game script I'm projecting for them being behind. That gives me a little concern. Yep. I would probably go back to that Gronk reception and thinking 4 is a pretty tall task for him. Just nothing about his volume over the past 5 or 6 weeks shows any indication of why he should get that, unless you want to buy into that narrative of, that they've been saving him. They've been saving him all the way for the AFC Championship game. So I think I would go with that one.
Yeah. We're both going against the odds maker Sean Corner on that one. So that'll be dicey for sure.
Although I will say he only had he has him projected for 3.7 receptions. So it's not by a long shot, you know.
No, and I think a lot of that, the fact that he's picking the over has to do with the plus odds on the over, because that gets calculated into those or not the projections, but the bet quality value on the tool gets baked into that as well with the price. So that's a big part of that. That's pushing him towards the over.
And one of the big reasons people were pointing to also liking Gronk was if Eric Berry wasn't going to play, and it does look like Eric Berry's going to be back too. So that also pours a little more cold water that it's not a great matchup. You know, Gronk's not getting the volume. I don't know what only other than they're just finally saving him for this perfect moment. I don't know why else you could get excited about Gronk.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup is good, I guess, is the only other thing. The Chiefs certainly pretty weak against the tight end. They've been gashed a bit, but that would be the only other thing. Everything else we're seeing in terms of volume, and that's really how we should be basing our bets, is volume is everything, right? So based on the volume from what we're seeing, it's hard to see him hitting that 4 number. Certainly possible, but I think you play this game 100 times, and he probably stays under, 66% of the time, something like that.
Yeah, and I don't even mind that under the 49.5 over at Bovada. That's a
I think it was just number. A ton of juice on that one was the only reason I went with the receptions when I saw it anyway.
Yeah, it looks like receptions under 3.5 is you only have to pay 125, but under the receiving yards is 125 as well.
Yeah.
On Bovada. Okay. So I mean, if you want to keep betting against Gronk, it sounds like neither of us are going to fault you for that.
All right, man. Cool. So I'm assuming you like the Saints -3 and the Chiefs -3 today?
Yep. Those are the big bets that I've made. Did some other kind of little teasers and parlays with the money line and stuff like that. But I think Saints win big and the Chiefs win by a decent amount.
Cool. Yeah, I took that Rams +3.5 earlier in the week.
Yeah.
But that was really before I dug in, and I'm sort of seeing the light a little bit now on the Saints. They, I don't think I do think the Saints are a little bit overvalued. Like, this is something Ben Battle and I talked about in our stream, looking at the best futures bets. And I do, in the big picture, I think the Saints are a little bit overvalued. Especially when you compared to the Patriots and the Chiefs, who are a little bit undervalued, I think. But yeah, in terms of just this game and this matchup, it's a pretty good one, I think.
Yeah, and I sat on it. I didn't make a move on it, and I guess even though I am confident, I waited for it to get down to -3. I didn't touch it at 3.5 just because that is such a big half point there. So yeah, I feel pretty strongly about that. But who knows? Who knows with this league? That's for sure. Awesome, Cort. Is there anything else, or should we wrap this up and maybe look forward to one more NFL show before the Super Bowl?
Yeah, let's do it. Super Bowl is going to be huge. I was, I do a lot of research for my site, obviously, and I was looking at the historical search rates for prop bets, and it kind of goes like this most of the year, and then Super Bowl goes like this. So I think it's going to be a big couple of weeks coming up. We're seeing nothing but growing interest in this prop sector. I know you were talking about it with Davis Maddock on the Takecast earlier, and I'm really excited for these next few weeks. We're going to do on the site, just for entertainment purposes. I think we're going to try to pick every single player prop possible, and try to see what we can do just for fun. Of course, we'll have some of our best bets, but yeah, join the mailing list, guys. We're 5-0 in these picks, and we're trying our best to save a can't miss pick every week for that. So make sure to join the mailing list. We got a ton of content up on the site, so check it out. Let us know what you think. Interact on Twitter, say what's up, ask us about the lines that you're seeing, and we'll do our best to help you out.
Yeah, no, definitely. You got to get on that mailing list, and if you're playing a portfolio of these picks, 5 or 6 a week, you're definitely coming out ahead. So yeah, now I guess the big question though, are you going to dip your toes in the over/under national anthem length, the color of the Gatorade? Like how willing are you to get your hands dirty with these props?
We'll probably break some of those down for fun, and with the caveat that it's just for entertainment purposes only, and there's probably not an edge there. But yeah, it's so much fun. There's going to be so many props to look at. I try to attack everything from an analytical angle. So yeah, I'll look at the historical rates of Super Bowl anthem lengths and stuff like that. I know Daryl Rovell from Action Network was tweeting about the I can't remember who the singer is for the national anthem, but he was saying she's a pro. She's she's all business, so he liked the under, I know, on the on the Super Bowl and the bet. But yeah, we'll dig into them a lot. We're going to do all the player props, and I don't really like the score first, but those kind of ones. But we'll definitely look at all the fun ones and see if we can find any kind of edge there for sure.
Excellent. All right, guys. So, yeah, check out Bet the Prop, bettheprop.com, and lots of good stuff coming over these next 2 weeks. I'm Peter Overzet, and, yeah, enjoy the games today, guys. Should be a fun one. And, yeah, we'll see you in a couple weeks for a Super Bowl show. Talk to you guys.
Thanks for hanging out, guys. Good luck.
Peace.
Peace.